Hey, Matt, it's David Hood with Tiger Dad. Hope you're doing okay. Just quick question. Obviously, what everybody wants to know, where were you when you heard the news that the game was not going to be played? You've traveled all the way to Tallahassee, and, what was your initial reaction?
Yeah, I was sitting in the tent about to eat breakfast. Myself and Blake Vincent got there pretty early, and we were just kind of waiting around. And breakfast did not start on time, so that was probably my first indication that something was up. And when Coach Swinney and Danny Poole came in, that's when they told us that the game had been canceled, and there was nothing we could really do about it at that point. So certainly a bizarre experience. I don't know that I would have ever guessed that we would go through something like that. Obviously, this year has created some extenuating circumstances, but definitely a weird experience, I would say.
Matt, this is Trevor from CUTigers.com. Coach Swinney said last night that he felt like Florida State just used COVID as an excuse to get out of the game. Did y'all as players feel that way? And how fired up does it get you to hear Coach Swinney, I guess, get as irate as he was over the whole situation?
One thing I'll say about Coach Swinney is that he's always going to have the players' backs, and he's going to do what's in the best interest of the players. So that's number one. And number two, I just think from a player's perspective, I know how diligent we've been in following our protocols and doing the testing and being socially distanced, and guys really having to sacrifice and not necessarily have that full college experience this year because they know how it could impact the team negatively. And so I think it was definitely disappointing to not be able to play the game after knowing how well we followed the protocols. And like I said, we certainly appreciate Coach Swinney stepping up for us and having our backs. But it is what it is. I mean, like I said, there was nothing that we could do to change it. It's the situation at hand, and we just really have to move forward and look forward to Pitt this weekend.
How are you? This is David again. How are you health-wise? Would you have been able to play last Saturday? And how are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm feeling great. I appreciate it. Definitely would have played last weekend. Got to get back into practice last week and start moving around. Obviously, a good sign. The injury wasn't as catastrophic as it maybe could have been. It was definitely disappointing to not be able to finish the game at Notre Dame. Have to give credit to Mason Trotter for stepping in. I know that's a tough spot to be in. I've been there before as a backup, and you don't play for a whole half, and then you're thrust into a game, especially a game like that. That's a lot to handle, especially for a young guy. So, but yeah, moving forward, I'm good, pretty good health. So just trying to keep and maintain that down the stretch for the back half of the season.
Do you think you guys are going to be getting a little antsy getting towards Saturday? Not really having played in 3 weeks by the time you get to Saturday?
Absolutely. I think even with just a traditional bye week, you have obviously 7 extra days. And so you get to Thursday and Friday before the game and you're really just wanting to play. You kind of want to get that monkey off your back, especially coming off a loss, a big game like that. You just want to go out and have something else to analyze and look at and turn the page. So it is what it is. I mean, it's like I said, it's definitely bizarre. It's not what we would have chosen to happen, but that's the circumstance that we're in and we have to roll with it. So it's come Saturday, we'll all be excited to play and finally, like I said, get that monkey off our backs.
Hey, Matt, this is Matt Connolly with the State. What was the situation like with the tent? Like, were y'all doing meetings there and meals there and doing all that kind of stuff in the tent out there?
Yeah, so because of all of the protocols and the social distancing and all of that stuff, and this year has been a bit of an adjustment when it comes to the meeting space versus where we're eating. Typically, in a normal year, those spaces are 2 separate rooms. You have you have the eating area, and then you have the defensive meeting room and the offensive meeting room. But because we really want to keep everything close to the vest and minimize the contact with other surfaces and other people, we've just had kind of a multi-use space for everybody. And so the hotel that we were at in Tallahassee did not have the capability to hold that many people. They didn't have big enough ballrooms. So that was kind of our everything multi-tool to meet and eat and everything else. So it was first time for that, but it certainly worked out well up until not being able to play the game. So
Hey, Matt, this is Grace Rayner from The Athletic. Coach Swinney had said last night that as far as he's concerned, Florida State can either pay for Clemson's travel back or come to Clemson. But other than that, he doesn't really see a reason to replay that game if one of those two things doesn't happen. Just where do the players stand on potentially returning to Tallahassee?
Well, at the end of the day, that decision is a bit above my pay grade, unfortunately, but I'll just defer to them on that. All I can say is that we're looking forward to Pitt. We really wanted to play this past weekend, and it didn't happen. Not traveling that far and not being able to play the game was disappointing, but moving forward, that's really out of my hands. Just looking forward to playing Pitt this week.
Hey, Matt, David with ESPN. I'm wondering if you could kind of tell us a little bit about the protocols that you guys go through in terms of kind of safety measures beyond just, obviously when you're going 11 on 11, there's only so much that can be done. But, during the rest of practice, during team meetings, what kind of stuff are you doing to limit the amount of contact tracing that would happen if someone or when someone does test positive?
That's a pretty extensive list. I'm sitting here in the indoor facility right now, which is our new retrofitted team meeting room. So that's where it starts. All the seats are spaced 6 feet apart. There's markers that show us where the seats need to be placed. The position meeting rooms, the offensive line, we meet in the defensive back seven meeting room. So everything's kind of flipped around. Some of the smaller position groups like quarterbacks can utilize maybe an offensive line meeting room, but offensive line and receivers, those are really big position groups. So we've kind of had to adapt and adjust to those meeting rooms to be able to have socially distanced meetings. All of the tables in our Paul Bistro are socially distanced. Even the buses. I mean, when we roll to an away game, we're rolling about 8 or 10 buses deep because they have a socially distance on the buses. And, for flying on the plane, for example, that makes it a little bit harder, obviously, because there's only so much space. But in that instance, we're all wearing N95 masks and the clear face shields to make sure that nothing would have been, transmitted on the plane. So the list goes on and on. I mean, it is amazing. I think the staff that we have here that is just so dedicated to making sure that we can operate as normal as possible in a crazy year like this. My hat really goes off to them and everything they've done for us. They clean the building all the time. It's really, I would be shocked if there was a better system in the country. I mean, we're lifting with masks and gloves on. So they're doing a really good job of trying to mitigate it as best we can. And unfortunately, the reality that we're in right now is that people are going to test positive regardless of all the things that we've done. I mean, you could go get gas in your car and get it that way. So there's only so much you can do, but I can say for a fact that while we're in this facility, everything is as clean as possible and as safe as it possibly can be.
Matt, Larry Williams with TigerIllustrated.com. In light of the lengthy list that you just recited and all the hoops you jumped through, does it bother you that it's suggested, I guess, from can you hear me?
Yes, I have you now. I'm
sorry. Does it bother you in light of all that it made suggested from the outside that y'all play fast and loose with, sending a symptomatic player on the plane and all that stuff?
I don't think it's necessarily an attack on me or the players per se. However, it is frustrating for me because I feel like they're questioning the credibility of people like Danny Poole and our medical staff and all of the people in our facility that make sure we are following these protocols. And so that's the frustrating part for me because Danny Poole, our medical staff, sports med, they have done an incredible job. And to suggest that, like you said, we're fast and loose or that we're just kind of nonchalant about it is just untrue and it's baseless. And so it's like, yeah, I mean, I guess you could say it's frustrating. Like I said, it's not necessarily an attack on my character, but it's an attack on other people's character in this facility. And I see them every day and the work that they do and the diligence that has been done. So it's baseless. And sometimes you just can't allow people on the outside to dictate how you feel. And deep down, you have to be convicted in yourself and know that what you're doing is the right thing. So that's all I'd say about that.
Hey, Bach, it's Trevor again. You talked about growing up, going to Notre Dame games, and the fact that you knew several people on that team. Was that about as difficult a thing as you've been through, having to leave that game early with the injury and watch it unfold helplessly the way it did?
Yeah, it was tough. At that point, really all I could do is support my teammates, support Mason and some of the other young guys that were being thrust into that situation. But it was a hard pill to swallow. Regardless of the outcome of the game, whether we won or lost, I felt like I had let my teammates down, and to some degree, even though it was out of my control. It's just the nature of the beast sometimes. And hopefully in a couple weeks we will get another shot at them. But it was a game that I'd looked forward to for a long time, and I wanted to be able to put it on the line for my teammates. And sometimes that's how she rolls, unfortunately, and just let you know that we're not in control of a lot of things. And like I said, I just, at that point, when I figured out that it wasn't realistic for me to go back into the game, I just had to support the guys that were out there and hope for the best. So that's a part of sports. It's not a fun part. And like I said, it's unfortunate, but the silver lining is that the injury wasn't too catastrophic and that I'd be back to playing rather quickly. So I've tried to flush it and move on, but like I said, I think everyone in the back of their mind is hoping we'll get another shot at Notre Dame down the line in Charlotte.
And Matt, David with ESPN again. I don't know if this is an easy question to answer necessarily, but you guys all obviously pushed to play this season. It's a thing that you really wanted to do. Given all the ups and downs, your star quarterback testing positive, a game being canceled the day of. I know Pittsburgh's got some issues right now that would make Saturday's game at least a little bit in question still. Do you think all this has been worth it for you guys? Has it been up to what you would have hoped, or has it fallen below what your expectations might have been? How would you sum up what the experience has been like for you guys as players?
I would say without question, it's been worth it. And yes, there's been things that have been challenging. There's been things that we're experiencing this year that we never have in the past. But at the end of the day, we get to show up to the team meeting every day and be around all the guys that we love. And we get to go to practice and play on Saturdays, the game that we love. And that's what it boils down to. And you're around people who care about you. You're around guys that you've known for 3-4 years, and even some maybe more than that from recruiting. And so this is your family. And unfortunately, a lot of us don't get to see our immediate families as often as we would like to. And so these are really guys that we lean on and guys that we want to be around. And so any opportunity to do that is certainly worth it. And I would, if we could go back to August and make the decision again, without question, I would still make the same decision.
All right, we have time for one more question.
Hey, Matt, this is Anna with Clemson 24/7. Tony and Dabo both said last week that kind of one of the priorities going forward for the offensive line was getting that second group more reps and more game ready and just kind of thrusting them into the action, even if they weren't necessarily totally comfortable with them out there. I mean, is that something that they've discussed to the entire offensive line as a whole, or is that something that just kind of goes unspoken?
It's definitely been an underlying thought throughout the offseason and the season. I think that looking at years past, myself included, was part of this, where we would have the starting guys, but we had a pretty good rotation of 7 or 8 guys to give the starters some breaks, but also give the younger guys some meaningful experience. And I think that's a very valuable aspect of what we do here at Clemson. And it's not just offensive line, but it is definitely prevalent along the offensive line. And it is important. I think that we've got a really, really, really young second group. I think back to last year, the second group that I was a part of, we had a lot of veteran guys, and now most of us are in the starting roles that we are. So it's definitely different. And to an extent, you just have to get the guys. You got to kind of just throw them in the fire. And it's tough, and it's definitely challenging. Like I said, I can point to Mason Trotter, who I doubt expected to have that big of a role against Notre Dame, but we need the help. And then even looking at the first group, there's things that we need to improve upon. And I'm the first person to raise my hand and say that. I think that obviously there's been a lot of criticism of the offensive line in the run game over the past couple of weeks. And I think some of that's probably warranted. I don't think it's necessarily the end of the world that some might think it to be, but there's all things that we need to improve on, including myself. Like I said, I'll be the first one to say that there's things that I need to get better at. And that's why I'm really looking forward to these next couple games to get back to the basics as we have in practice, and really, bring this O-line group to a level that we know we're capable of playing, and it starts by just getting the opportunity to play. So I know we're really looking forward to that, and the young guys as well having the opportunity to develop.